Dr. Mark Jangizi here with your Science Moment. Today, I want to talk about religion, spirituality, and mass hysteria. And I've made a joke, on Twitter and elsewhere before that making fun of the folks that are often public intellectuals and academics who make fun of religions their whole life only to be swept up by the first death cult that sweeps through. And that's what really this COVID cult is. If you focus all of your energies and all of your principles upon minimizing just one thing at the expense of everything else, then it's a death cult. If your attitude is that, look, we should just do all that we can to maximize the number of bananas in the world and maximize intake of bananas, well, at first glance, that doesn't sound so bad to have more bananas. No, but you'll upset the whole world. You'll have massive deaths. You'll have massive loss of the economy will crash. Everything will crumble around you if you have this focus on one thing at the expense of everything else. So, of course, the folks that have fallen into this, many of them public intellectuals, academics, journalists, and folks like this, don't realize that they've fallen into a very religious-like thing. But really, the question that I want to ask here is, and I don't know the answer per se, is the degree to which folks who are grounded in some other deep narrative, something that goes outside of the normal societal narratives that sweep through all the time, like religion, are these people potentially much more able to weather the storm when these hysterias go through? When the avalanche starts going, these people are already grounded into the ground, into the firm stone under the ground, aren't sliding with it. I do have a strong feeling that that's the case. A lot of the folks that follow me mention how they're religious. They ask, hey, are you religious too? And let me tell you my background. No, I'm not religious. I'm an atheist, and I've talked about religion before, briefly in an earlier science moment before the endless COVID season. And one of the things that I've talked about, in a lot of my research is why aspects of culture have been designed, and they've been culturally selected over time to be well designed to fit us. This is the reason that we're these fancy human 2.0s now that are very unlike our biological selves, although we're biologically identical. We can read and write, and we have language, and it's not because we evolved to have these things. It's because cultural evolution shaped these artifacts of writing and the sounds of speech, and all of these other artifacts around us are designed to fit us incredibly well. They've evolved to fit us and transform our innate powers to do other kinds of things. And so these are a lot of the kinds of things that I've worked on. But I suspect that religions themselves have culturally evolved over time to fit us well and to do something for us. And they're much more complex objects than writing systems and language, and so very hard to study. And so as a scientist, I've always avoided them because it's really hard to get good, rigorous, kind of mathematically grounded answers. But one potential answer is, again, they potentially could help keep society stable and avoid these kinds of sweeps that go through and cut society in half and go against your evil neighbors. Of course, sometimes religions just have these notions of other people that are evil, but they themselves, once they're there, could it be that they provide a stability to prevent further ones going through? And it seems plausible, although I don't have data on this. Now, in my own case, as I mentioned, and I talked about being aloof, which is really important for potentially not going under the sway. And one great way to be aloof, well, is to be grounded in a deep religious connection to some kind of religion that is sort of all about the life of the universe and everything. And if you're connected to that life and universe and everything via some religion that is just deeper than any of the stuff around you, then you can easily imagine that these kinds of things that sweep through, you're like, okay, I'm not going to get caught up in that. You're not consciously thinking this through, but you're not going to get caught up in it because you've already got something you're deeply embedded in, and that's much longer lasting, and it's been with you your whole life. Now, in my case, as an atheist, ever since I was 8 years old, I don't know, really sort of as a kid, my goal in life was to answer the questions to the universe, which was always my aim. And I soon found Carl Sagan's show. I'm sort of a Carl Sagan generation Cosmos kid, and that tapped into that desire to answer the questions of the universe. And what's great about those kinds of the way that Carl Sagan brought cosmology and science and everything into our lives was that rather than saying here's how science can be really useful for you and to make you can build electronic circuits and you can be whatever. No, he was flying around in some dopey crystal ship through the universe, and he played dopey. I mean, it's great. I can't remember but great music. But it's sort of dopey, at the time. But all of that together sort of tugged at the heartstrings of the same kinds of things that religions do. And I always make the joke that I call it spiritualicious. It has sort of the same kind of flavors as do spiritual memes. And so once you fall into this, when I fell into this as a kid, so this is what my life is about. My life is about trying to answer the questions of the universe, life, universe, and everything, trying to get it all, understand how brains can start to think. Whatever the most fundamental questions were, I really wanted to aim my life into doing those things, and that's indeed what I did. So I was physics, math undergrad, PhD was mathematics. I spent a lot of time in graduate school also in philosophy departments and fundamental sort of limits of mathematical logic, theoretical computation, the ultimate limits of thinking machines. Also that one day I could be able to really study how things could become conscious. I never really did study consciousness per se, but I wanted to have all those tools of physics and math and cognitive science and psychology so that I could really understand these kinds of complex things like evolved beings and cultures and societies. But I did that in an almost religious, motivated in almost religious fashion. And I think had I not had that kind of grounding, that kind of spiritualiciousness driving me, then this whole notion that I've talked about before in an earlier moment about being aloof might have been hard. How can you be aloof if you're not grounded in something else? So we're hitting the new year of 2021, approaching 2 years of the world being turned upside down with mass hysteria, and so I just want to motivate those, and of course if you're on Team Rationality, the skeptics that are against the radical civil rights violations that have occurred over the last 2 years and the exaggerations and so forth, then you may already have found some kind of grounding. You've already been to some degree aloof, and I'm curious in the comments if you'd mention how do you think that you avoided it to the extent that you were aloof? Is it because you yourself are religious, or is it because there's something else deep in your life that did this for you? And what I would like to hope not to see is just that, well, I didn't really know, and then I'm historically a person on the right, and then I saw that the right shifted over, and so I did it because the right. Those are the kinds of things. If that turns out to be your reason why you have the position that you have, and you're on my side, I'd suggest coming up with better reasons, fundamental, grounded reasons that keep you not identifying yourself as right or left in the team-like sense. If you call yourself on the right, you should call yourself on the right because in that kind of diagram of personal liberties and economic liberties, you find yourself in that part of the space, not by virtue of it being a team kind of thing. All of us need to come up with things that drive us, that motivate us independently, give our lives meaning, deep things that go way beyond political partisanship, team membership, being part of any kind of mob. That membership, that motivation, needs to come from something very deep and personal to yourself, whether it's in the arts or the sciences or in religion or whatever it might be. Without that, I suspect we're all much more likely to be swayed by the opinions of those around us. And it's exactly those kinds of swayings that can lead to these great mass hysterias, which are the greatest, have the greatest devastation that can ever occur in societies. And that was your science moment.